There are nights when life feels heavier than our own bones can carry. Nights when the world seems blind to our struggle. She had one of those nights. A broke waitress walking home after a double shift, soaked by the kind of cold rain that makes you question every decision that led you here. She wasn't thinking about kindness. She wasn't thinking about miracles. She was just trying to survive another day. But fate has a strange way of stepping into our lives disguised as inconvenience. Because halfway down that dark street, she saw him. An old man drenched, trembling, clutching his cane like it was the only thing left keeping him upright. Most people would have walked past. Most people did. But not her. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that the moment she reached out her hand to help a stranger in the rain, she was changing the course of her own life. And by the next morning, when her world was just seconds away from collapsing, that same old man would walk back into her life with a truth powerful enough to save everything she was about to lose. She clocked out long after midnight, her feet aching from the kind of tired that doesn't go away with sleep. The diner's neon sign buzzed behind her as she stepped into the rain, a cold, unforgiving downpour that felt almost personal. Her apron was still damp with spilled coffee, her tips barely enough for groceries, and the weight of overdue bills pressed on her chest like a quiet, constant warning. Every puddle she stepped into felt like one more thing life took from her without asking. There was no music in her headphones, no umbrella in her hand, just the steady hiss of rain and the familiar voice in her mind whispering, "You're running out of time." She wasn't angry. She wasn't dramatic. Just tired, the kind of tired that sinks into your spirit. The kind of tired adults don't talk about. And on that lonely walk home, when everything inside her felt stretched thin and fragile, she thought the night couldn't possibly get any heavier. She was wrong. Halfway down the block, through the curtain of rain, she noticed a shape moving slowly, too slowly for the weather. An old man. No umbrella. No coat thick enough for the storm. He was hunched forward, one trembling hand wrapped around a wooden cane, the other gripping the air as if trying not to drown in the darkness around him. Each step looked like a negotiation with pain. Water streamed off his face, and still he pushed forward, determined but fragile. Cars passed him without slowing. People hurried by under their umbrellas, glancing for a second and then looking away, pretending they didn't see the struggle. Pretending it wasn't their problem. She stood there, soaked, exhausted, shivering, the last person who should have had anything left to give. But something in the way he fought the rain, the loneliness of it, cut through her own exhaustion. It wasn't heroism. It wasn't some dramatic revelation. It was just the quiet human truth that she couldn't walk past someone suffering like that. She exhaled, pulled her thin coat tighter, and took a step toward him. Small choice. One that would change everything. She reached him quickly, the rain slapping against her cheeks like cold warnings. "Sir, are you all right?" The old man lifted his eyes. Tired, watery, confused. I just need to get home," he whispered, as if even speaking took strength he didn't have. She looked down the street toward the last bus she was supposed to catch. It was already pulling up to the stop. Her only ride home. Her only chance to get enough sleep before her morning shift. Her only shot at not being late again. For a split second, her mind screamed what survival often screams. You can't afford this. You can't afford anyone else's problems. But the old man's hands were shaking so badly that the cane rattled in the rain. She knew what it felt like to be left alone in a moment when you needed someone. Anyone, just to pause and notice. She made her decision with a soft, tired sigh. The kind you release when you know you're choosing the harder path. She slipped off her coat, the only dry thing she had, and draped it around his shoulders. His breath caught, surprised by the unexpected kindness. Then she hooked her arm through his and said, "Come on. I'll walk you home." Behind her, the bus doors hissed shut. The lights faded as it drove away. And with it, the small piece of stability she was desperately trying to hold on to. But she didn't look back. Some part of her knew. Doing the right thing often feels like a loss in the moment. She had no idea how right she was. The walk to his building was slow, painfully slow, the kind that forces you to notice every second slipping away. Rainwater soaked through her shoes. Her hair clung to her face. Her fingers were numb from gripping his arm to keep him steady. Yet, somewhere in that quiet, uncomfortable journey, the world felt strangely still. Sometimes life slows you down just long enough to hear the things you've been running from. When they finally reached his steps, he paused as if gathering the words that had been stuck behind years of silence. "You didn't have to do this," he said gently. His voice raw like it came from a place that had been ignored for too long. She shrugged, embarrassed by the attention. "It's nothing. You just needed a hand." But he shook his head, slowly, deliberately. "No, it's not nothing. People don't stop anymore." He looked at her coat wrapped around him, rain dripping from the sleeves. "Not in weather like this. Not when they have their own troubles." She didn't know what to say. 'Cause he was right. Her life was already hanging by a thread. Helping him wasn't logical, smart, or convenient. It was just human. He studied her for a moment, as if seeing through the tiredness she tried to hide. "You're carrying something heavy," he murmured. "Not in your hands, but in your eyes." That caught her off guard. No one ever noticed her that closely. No one ever looked long enough. Before she could respond, he added quietly, "Thank you. You may not realize it tonight, but kindness has a way of returning." She smiled politely, not believing a word of it. Life had never returned anything to her. Not yet. But as she turned to leave, the old man watched her with a look she didn't understand. A look that hinted he knew something she didn't. Something that would matter in the morning. Morning came too quickly. The kind of morning that punishes you for doing the right thing the night before. She barely slept. Her clothes were still damp. Her nerves were frayed. But she pushed through it because she always did. By the time she rushed through the diner's back door, her heart was racing. One glance at the clock chilled her deeper than last night's storm. She was late. Again. Her manager, the kind of man whose voice filled a room before he even entered it, was already waiting. Arms crossed, a type, eyes filled with that familiar mixture of disappointment and irritation. "Really?" he said, loud enough for the cooks to hear. "Again?" She opened her mouth to explain, but he cut her off with a raised hand. "No excuses. I'm done with excuses." His voice was sharp, but what hurt more was the humiliation. Co-workers looking at her with pity, customers turning to watch the scene. She wanted to disappear, to shrink into the floor, to say something, anything that might soften his anger. "I helped someone last night," she whispered, her voice cracking from exhaustion. "I didn't make the bus." He scoffed. "Helping someone won't keep this place running. Helping someone won't fix your attendance. And if you can't take this job seriously." His tone made it clear. She was standing on the edge. One wrong word and she'd lose everything. Her paycheck, her rent money, her fragile sense of stability. Inside, her chest tightened. Kindness doesn't pay the rent, she thought bitterly. Kindness doesn't save you when life decides to hit. She could feel the eyes on her, waiting to see how far this would go. And it was about to go all the way. 'Cause what happened next? No one in that diner could have predicted. The manager didn't calm down. He escalated. Some people do that when they finally feel they have the upper hand. He stepped forward, invading her space just enough to make her feel small. "You're a good worker," he said, though his tone made it sound like an accusation. "But this constant lateness. You can't run a business like that. Customers don't care about your problems. Neither do the owners." She swallowed hard, heat rising in her face. Every word felt like a blow she wasn't strong enough to dodge. "I'm trying," she said quietly. "I always try." He shook his head, unimpressed. "I don't need people who try. I need people who show up." Her throat tightened. Behind her eyes she felt tears threatening, that burning, humiliating pressure adults know too well. The tears you force back because you can't afford to look weak at the exact moment someone is trying to break you. He grabbed the schedule from the counter and slapped it down. This isn't working. I think we're done here. Everything inside her went still. Not angry. Not dramatic. Just hollow. She could already see the chain reaction. Rent unpaid, electricity shut off, jobs harder to find, life taking another piece of her she couldn't replace. "No, please," she whispered. "I need this job." But he'd already made up his mind. Her kindness the night before, her exhaustion, her humanity, none of it mattered in this moment. He was about to fire her in front of everyone. And that was the moment the bell over the diner door rang. Soft chime. Barely noticeable. But what it brought in changed everything. The manager opened his mouth to deliver the final blow, the words that would end her job, her security, her last fragile piece of stability. But then the diner door chimed. A small, delicate sound. Yet everyone's head turned. An older man stepped inside. Not just any man. The man from the rain. But he looked different now, completely different. No cane shaking in his hands. No soaked clothes clinging to his frame. No weakness in his posture. He stood tall, composed, almost quietly powerful. The kind of presence that changes the air in a room without saying a word. She froze. Her breath caught. This wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't someone who came into diners. This was someone who owned the kinds of buildings diners were in. He scanned the room until his eyes found her. Wet hair pulled back, apron twisted in her hands, face pale from fear and humiliation. Something shifted in his expression. Not pity. Recognition. The manager, annoyed at the interruption, forced a customer-friendly smile. "Sir, table 4. But the old man ignored him completely and walked straight toward her. Every step felt like a question she didn't know how to answer. "Good morning," he said softly, as if the two of them had simply bumped into each other by chance. She whispered, stunned. Why are you here?" Before he could answer, the manager inserted himself between them, speaking with forced politeness. "Sir, if there's a problem, I can take your order." "She's busy." The old man turned his eyes toward the manager. Steady, unshakable, and in one sentence, he revealed more than anyone in that diner was prepared for. "I'm not here to place an order. I'm here to discuss my family's business." The room stiffened. The manager blinked. He stared. He hadn't come for breakfast. He had come for her. And whatever he was about to say next was going to turn the entire situation upside down. The manager's smile cracked. You could almost hear the panic behind his eyes. He cleared his throat, suddenly unsure of himself. Your family's business," he repeated, trying to sound informed. "As in, which business exactly?" The old man didn't answer him. He kept his attention on her, the girl he'd walked with in the rain, the girl who had given up her bus, her warmth, her safety, just to make sure he made it home. "My son owns this diner," the old man finally said. "And my family owns the entire block it stands on." Silence. Heavy, stunned silence. The manager's face drained of color. This was no ordinary customer. This was someone who had the power to close the diner, replace the staff, change the lease with a signature. But the old man wasn't done. He turned to the manager with a calmness that cut deeper than anger ever could. "I came to check in," he said, "after I received a call last night. A concerned neighbor told me an employee of ours walked a shivering old man home in a storm." He let that sink in. Everyone in the diner listened. "And this morning," he added, "I wanted to see how someone who shows that level of humanity is treated in this establishment." The manager's lips parted in a shaky half-protest. "Sir, it's just that she was late and—" "She was late because she was helping me," the old man said firmly. "And I won't let her be punished for that." Then he faced her again, his voice gentler. "You didn't tell me you worked here," he said with a soft, knowing smile. "You didn't tell me anything about yourself. You simply helped because it was the right thing to do. People like you are rare." Her chest tightened. No one had ever said something like that to her. Not with sincerity. Not with weight. He looked at the manager. I want her position secured. I want her schedule adjusted so she's not punished for compassion. And he paused, letting his words land like a final verdict. I want her treated with the respect she earned last night. The manager nodded so quickly it looked painful. Oh, of course. Absolutely. Consider it done. But the old man wasn't finished. He leaned closer to her, lowering his voice just enough for only her to hear. Kindness, he said, is a seed. It doesn't grow the moment you plant it. But it always grows. Always. And in that moment, in front of coworkers, customers, and the boss who nearly fired her, she realized something. The world may not reward goodness immediately, but it never forgets it. The diner slowly returned to life around them, plates clattering, conversations restarting, the smell of coffee drifting through the air, but she stood still, absorbing what had just happened. Her job, moments ago slipping through her fingers, was suddenly secure. Her dignity, moments ago crushed in front of everyone, was restored. And the man she'd helped, a stranger she thought she'd never see again, had just become the reason her life didn't collapse today. Yet the strange thing was, she didn't feel triumphant. She felt humbled, often grounded, because the truth hit her all at once. Kindness had cost her everything last night. Her time, her bus ride, her rest. But this morning it saved more than her job. It saved a piece of her faith in the world. The old man prepared to leave. But before he stepped out, he gently placed her coat, now dry and neatly folded, into her hands. You gave this to me without hesitation, he said. I hope today shows you that the world hasn't forgotten how to give back. She swallowed hard, emotion building in her throat. Why me? She whispered. I'm nothing special. He gave a soft, sad smile, the kind older people have when they've lived long enough to know when someone is lying to themselves. You're special because you choose to be, he said. A person's character is revealed in moments when no one is watching. Last night in the rain you showed yours. Then he walked out, slow, steady, but with the strength she hadn't seen before. Every head in the diner followed him. Every pair of eyes turned back to her with a new kind of respect. The manager approached, awkward and stiff. Let's, reset, he muttered. You still have your job. I'm sorry. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't everything she deserved. But it was enough for today. She tied her apron, took a deep breath, and stepped back onto the floor. Not defeated, not invisible, but changed. Because sometimes life waits for the quietest, most inconvenient act of kindness, to give you back more than you ever expected. And that is the price, and the reward, of choosing to be human in a world that often forgets how. Life rarely gives us clear signs that we're doing the right thing. Most days we pour out more than we receive. Most nights, kindness feels like a luxury, something we can't afford when we're just trying to survive. But every once in a while, life reveals the truth. It shows us that the smallest act on the hardest night can echo in ways we never imagined. She didn't help that old man because she wanted anything. She didn't help him because she thought it would come back to her. She helped him because, somewhere beneath all her exhaustion and fear, she still believed in decency. And that belief, fragile as it was, saved her. The next time you question whether your kindness matters, the next time you feel like you're giving more than life gives you back, remember this. Kindness doesn't return when you want it. It returns when you need it. And often it walks back into your life just like he did. Unexpected, quiet, and exactly on time. This story isn't about a waitress or an old man. It's about you. Me. About the truth that in a world moving too fast, the smallest, most human decisions still carry the power to change everything. So ask yourself, who could you help today even if it slows you down? 'Cause you never know. That moment of kindness might be the one that saves you tomorrow.